Hello, how's it going? My name is Harrison Greenbaum, and you are now watching Who Books That with Harrison Greenbaum, presented by the International Brotherhood of Magicians, the other IBM. And we'll be live streaming to you regularly Mondays and Wednesdays here at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, interviewing the top magicians and entertainers in the world. And boy, do we have an incredible guest. I am so excited. So make some noise, get excited for Matt King, everybody. How you doing?
It looks like it's going to be me and you, I guess, huh?
Yeah. Exactly. You look like you're in your doomsday bunker.
Yeah, I see three people giving live comments already.
Oh, yeah. How you doing, Melissa and Brett and the great Arjunia?
Yeah. Wow. The great Arjunia's magic. Hi.
Yes. Just in case you didn't know from the great at the beginning.
Right?
Well, I'll give you your intro because I'm sure everybody who's tuning in already knows about you. But to fill everybody in, because I did read your Wikipedia, you were born in Louisville, Kentucky. You met your wife in the audience in 1985, the year before I was born. You moved to LA in 1987, the year after I was born. And then to Las Vegas in 1997. You had your first television appearance on An Evening at the Improv, appeared in all 5 World's Greatest Magics. You started your run at Harrah's Casino January 11, 2000, where you've been running for 20 years. You raised money for Optimist International's JOOI of Reading program, generating thousands of books for needy children, and is an acclaimed author and entrepreneur with Magic in a Minute, the comic strip, your Lunchbox O Magic, your book O Magic, and in terms of reviews for your show, the Best Magic Show in Las Vegas by the Dallas Morning News, which is weird because that's in Texas. The Best Bargain Price Show by Las Vegas Review Journal, which seems like a backhanded compliment. And Pure Genius by Joe Bob Briggs, who I have never heard of. And the premier comedy magician in the world today by Magic Magazine, a magazine that doesn't exist. So happy to have you. How are you doing in Las Vegas?
I'm great. You got that from Wikipedia?
And a couple of other sources. I was stupid around.
Like an updated bio, if you would wish.
And what have you been up to in the last week? I can add it. Anybody can add to Wikipedia.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I should have. Well, I got plenty of time.
I'm sorry. I guess I feel weird that you're not dressed up and I am. So I can, if you want, I can make it a little bit more comfortable.
I didn't know it was supposed to be formal.
Yeah. Well, it's Matt King. When you get to interview a legend, you got to dress up. But just in case, I'm prepped.
I started to wear a Matt King suit, but then, wait.
There we go. So now we're a little bit, that seems a little bit more informal, I think.
Oh, plaid for me.
Yeah, the Matt King plaid. And if it gets too hot, I have a third outfit underneath. But I guess we could kick this thing off.
I don't have anything on, but I don't mind taking this off.
Take it off. Yeah. This is snaps, by the way. So there's a big reveal.
Oh, that was sexy when you did that.
There you go. That's the only shirt that I have that does that. And now it's broken. Yeah, let's get into the questions. So let's talk about the quarantine first. How's it been? What has it been like in Vegas? What have you been doing to keep yourself busy?
Well, I don't know about the rest of the world, but I mean, we're not having any quarantine here in Las Vegas. I've been doing shows. People act.
I like that. A bunch of people just bought plane tickets to Las Vegas.
Yeah. It's, our daughter goes to school in New York. She's home. My wife's here. My wife's marriage and family therapist, and she's seeing clients in another room right now via the same, not the same platform, but a HIPAA compliant platform. So we're just all hanging out. It's been great. The other night we played Quiplash, a video game, via people all over the country, like 8 or 10 friends all over the country. So, I miss having people over, but I'm still enjoying myself.
And with Quiplash, it's all about coming up with the funniest line in the moment. So do you feel like you're cheating a little bit with other friends who are not professional comedy magicians?
I think everyone who was there was a professional comedy magician or juggler or comic. Straight.
Oh, that's amazing. Who won?
I won a couple times. Nick DeFott won a couple times. I can't remember who else.
Oh, that's awesome.
My wife won, actually. My daughter won. My daughter's actually the funniest. Yeah.
My mom once was interviewed for a newspaper article about me and said my sister is the funnier one.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, everybody knows I'm the least funny person in my family. My sister and brother are funnier. My cousin is funnier. My dad was funnier. He's less funny now that he's dead. But
Still funnier than some of the magicians we've seen.
right, still funnier than many people. Yeah, yeah. My uncle is funny. Everybody's funnier than me, but I'm the only one who makes any dough off of it.
Well, so let's get into that a little bit because you're both your grandfathers were magicians. So how does that happen?
Yeah,
That grandpas know magic.
Meaning they knew a couple of tricks. They were both salespeople. One owned a service station and one owned a insurance agency. But they used magic like icebreaker-y kind of things with clients and taught me tricks when I was a kid.
And is your daughter named after one of them? Is Ellie and Elwood connected?
No, her full name is Elizabeth, but and we call her Eli actually.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, so she's been called Eli all her life. So she's named. My wife has a grandmother named Elizabeth, and I have a sister and a grandmother named Elizabeth. So it was a family name. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
And then her middle name was picked by Johnny Thompson, Penn Jillette, Michael Godot at dinner at Peppermill here in town. Her middle name is Sky, and we were just trying to come up with really horrible names. Like if it was a boy, we joked that we should call him Joe, and then his name would be Joe King. But
that's pretty good.
Yeah, and then Sky. You're too young to know this, but there was a TV show when I was a really little kid called The Adventures of Sky King. I don't know.
It's weird to turn to Penn though for naming it because he has a kid named Moxie Crime Fighter.
Right. Yeah.
He's the most creative name right now.
Right. Yeah. Speaking of which, the other night I was starved for sports, and I'm looking at ESPN. And there's the Moxie games. You ever heard of that?
No. Are people trying to play basketball via webcam?
No, it's a bunch of jugglers. You know Jason Garfield, he's a juggler. I don't know. But anyway, it's like the juggling Olympics.
You can do that alone. That's okay.
Yeah, you can do
it. They want competing as a juggler.
From I don't know how many months ago, but the Passing Zone were commentators. Penn was a commentator. And I assume since it's called the Moxie Games, I haven't asked Ben, but I assume he put up some money.
Yeah, that's amazing.
But one of the events, two of them were incredible. One of them, actually, three of them were incredible. One is like juggling fighting, where you're juggling three clubs and you try to knock a club out of the other guy's hand and interrupt his pattern, and whoever keeps juggling last is the winner.
So was that invented when somebody's mom kept trying to stop him from being a juggler?
Probably. And then there was also then there was dodgeball juggling, and they had like the professional dodgeball guys behind the line, and then there were like 8 or 10 guys juggling 3 clubs, and the dodgeball guys were trying to screw up their patterns, and the last juggler standing was the winner. So
that's amazing. Your Guinness Book of World Records would fit in that category of weird stuff.
The world's longest game of telephone. Yeah.
How did you come up with that? Did you were you like, I need a record?
Kind of, yeah. We were just trying to think of stupid publicity ideas, and then I had a method for predicting the ending. So I don't know. I got all my buddies to do it, and Harris got on board. That was 15 years ago or more. I don't know. I don't know whether that record still stands. I have no idea.
I know, it's amazing. Well, let's get into the.
Yeah, you got some actual. Oh, somebody just said I saw combat juggling. Yeah, it was fantastic.
Oh yeah, and then Mike Hammer actually asked, Kentucky has television.
I'm not in Kentucky. But yes, we have television, and that's how I learned about shoes, actually.
Nice. So you've been doing the show now for 20 years in Harrah's, and you've been performing for many years more than that.
What year were you born? What year were you born?
1986.
Oh my God. Yeah. And I'd already been doing magic full time for 5 years when you were born.
Wow.
Jeez.
I'm dating somebody who's 26 and she makes me feel old.
You're dating somebody who's 26?
She got me a birthday card that was a happy birthday grandpa.
Wait. I think that's the wrong pronoun.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, my girlfriend who's in there that won't come out at any point during this interview.
All right.
It's the new Canada. It's my quarantine closet.
Yeah, got it.
But when you were developing the show, like I think some people experience their development as a step, they're stepwise. Some people have it as a gradual. Some people have it exponential. How would you look at your act as developing over time?
Instantaneous. Yeah, I mean, I don't know, probably that. I mean, I've been really lucky, and I'm sure the same for you, you feel like. I've always had, I've been at the right place at the right time to have the right places to do a bunch of shows. I started to say shitload, but I think we're not supposed to say shit. When I was in college, I got a job at this amusement park in the summers doing 3 shows a day, 7 days a week. Huge strides there. I mean, doing that many, 21, sometimes as many, on busy days, sometimes we did 6 shows. And then when that was done, comedy clubs, in the middle of that, comedy clubs kind of started sprouting up around the country outside of New York and LA and Chicago. And I got in on the ground floor of that, and started as a middle act there. And, was a middle act for a couple of years and then started headlining. And so, I mean, in those places, 7 to 10 shows a week at the time. And then after that, Las Vegas. And 10 shows a week here. So it's just been, and each of those, this little amusement park, Tombstone Junction, I did it with, what's his name? Lance Burton. I did 3 summers with him. The 2 of us did one or a 2-person show. And then I did 2 more summers by myself while he was on the Tonight Show. And,
what is that phone call like? Take me back to that phone call.
Guess what I'm doing, you mean?
Well, no, you're on the phone. He's like, I'm getting ready to go on the Tonight Show. And he's like, oh, so what are you up to?
Yeah, well, I'm getting ready to do a show in this, building with concrete floors where they serve hamburgers and Coca-Colas. Enjoy. And I'm watching it with your girlfriend. I'm watching your first appearance with your girlfriend.
Nice.
Yeah. So that was the only consolation.
And I'd heard that he was the reason that you moved out. Was he one of the main people who were telling you to move out to Vegas?
Yeah. I mean, when I, 20 years ago, I got married in 85 and like 87. So 23 years ago, my wife and I moved to LA. And so we lived there for 10 years. And he kept saying, you should move to Las Vegas. You should move to Las Vegas. This is the perfect spot for you. And I'm like, I don't think it is the perfect spot for me. I don't have that kind of show, really. I mean, it's just me standing there doing tricks. And, at the time also, I mean, I don't know. You probably do some straight stand-up shows where you don't do any magic.
Yeah, all the time. Although it's as straight as I'm able to do.
Right. Yeah. And but I mean, for me to be accepted in those clubs at the time, I mean, I didn't do straight stand-up, but I did, try to be as close to a comic as I could. I mean, I didn't have any music cues or any kind of production. It was me and this mic on a stand and a bar stool with my little suitcase of crap. And, because I really wanted, I mean, I don't know whether it's insecurity or not, but it was just one of the things I really wanted was to be accepted by those guys that I admired. And so it was great to be, as a middle act, sitting in the back of the room watching these guys and how they structured their show and the people, and how much time they spent, being on the road with these guys, how much time they spent, you know, in between shows working on, you know, what they were going to say that night, changing one word here and there, and just the amount of time. And it's sad to say, I mean, that's a little different than the way a lot of magicians are. I mean, they don't.
Yeah. I mean, do you think you were more influenced by the comedians at that point than the magicians?
I mean, I, you know, Jay Leno, I worked with him a number of times, and he kept trying to convince me, hey, give up that magic shit. You're funny, and, you know, people love you, you know, your personality, etc., and you don't need that. And I'm like, well, it's not something, I'm not doing it because I need it. I'm doing it because I love it. And so
I get that all the time. People, I think the comedians look at like, oh, this guy, you don't need the handicap.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Play without the training wheels.
Right. And yeah. And Penn, you know, Penn chided me all over my, you know, for many, many years, saying, you know, you would be super, super famous if you would give up magic. Jay Leno was right. I'm like, I don't, you know, I'm not in this to be famous. I'm in it because I love being a magician. And so, and at that time, did that Mike Hammer thing just show up on your screen?
Yes. Oh yeah, it showed up to everybody.
Oh,
we'll get to the roast in a little bit. One of the jokes I wanted to say was, it's so exciting to be with so many talented and incredible magicians and Mike Hammer.
Ah, right. So, you know, I never want. I mean, I didn't look at it as a crutch, but I did. But their acceptance meant a lot to me, and so I structured you know, those clubs were just an amazing training ground. In that, also, I mean, I'm sure you're familiar with this, but I mean, a lot of the people who book those clubs, they don't even watch many of the nights. You know, they're in the office ordering beer and counting money, and
yeah.
So what they're looking at is laughs per minute. You know, I mean, if they're sitting in their little cubby hole in the back and they can hear you laugh and laugh and laugh and laugh and laugh, that's what they want. And that was great, you know, to put those expectations on myself too, to, you know, have that time between the laughs be as short as possible too.
I say that in my lecture every time, that a comedian's trying to go every 20 seconds with a laugh, and comedy magicians sometimes are every 2 to 3 minutes. And it's about closing that gap, because you can, it is possible to get a laugh every 10, 20 seconds.
Yeah. Yeah. Not always a giant one, but yeah.
And you were talking earlier about Lance getting you to come out to Las Vegas from.
Yeah. So I got sidetracked. I'm sure I'll do that.
Oh yeah, no worries.
All this. Yeah. So when we were in LA and I was working, you know, he would say, come move here, move here, move here. I'm like, I just don't think I have the right show. I mean, I don't have any dancing girls. You know, it's just me and a mic on a stand and a little suitcase sitting on a stool and a glass of water. And it's not, I don't, but he would even call he and my wife are friends too. And he would even tell her, you know, Jennifer, guys should move here. You should try to get Mac to move here. And like I mentioned earlier, she's a marriage and family therapist, and he would, you know, dangle that over her too. You know, there are a lot of crazy people in Las Vegas. So, and eventually, I mean, I started working the Improv. When I first started coming to town, the Improv was here, and the Comedy Stop at the Trop, and another little club called the Comedy Max. And so I would come in and do those 1 or 2 weeks a year. And then I started, you know, somehow people saw those. And then then The World's Greatest Magic started taping here. And the people from Caesars, those were all shot at Caesars. And I hosted the taping. None of that stuff was on the shows, on the TV shows, but I hosted all those tapings, you know, keeping the audience entertained while they changed sets and cameras and looked at stuff. And so those Caesars people saw me, and they started putting me in, you know, filling in. I started coming to town to fill in other shows that had, like, production shows and whatever, that when the Dog Act wanted to take a week off or whatever. And so, I mean, I started gradually, you know, being here more and more and more. And then my wife and I decided we wanted to have a kid. And so, but we didn't want to have a kid in LA. I was gone 200 days a year, maybe. on the road. So we thought, even if I don't ever get a show in Las Vegas, if I do 6 or 8 weeks a year in a club, and then I get fill-in work in these review shows, in 8 or 10 weeks a year, that starts to add up. And then I started filling in for Nick Lewin before I moved here at the Maxim. He had an afternoon show at the Maxim, Nick did. And so I started doing a week here and there for him. So, it's like, okay, I could probably have 3 months of work at home, which was more than I had. I was doing showcase stuff in Las Vegas or in LA, but I wasn't making any money doing any of those. So
yeah, they still pay the same. I did some shows out in LA, and you still get the $8 for cab fare. That's your set pay.
Yeah.
Which is I would rather get 0 at a certain point.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah.
Somebody had a question about your friendship with Lance. I'm going to just bring him in. This is one of the viewers.
Oh, shoot.
Hey, I have a question. You're from Kentucky?
Yes, sir. How about you?
You prefer
John Deere hat? Is that your question?
Do you prefer International Harvester or John Deere?
Well, looks like John Deere's the right answer.
All right, then you're fine. We'll get along just fine. Hey, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Yeah, for those who are watching, Mac did not know that Lance would be a special guest in this chat.
Surprise!
Surprise! Is Johnny Thompson going to be on next?
Yeah,
No, he's in the space around Lance. He's the spirit in the spirit space.
You didn't tell him about Eugene Berger getting you moved to Las Vegas, did?
Oh, right. Well, that was your fault. Yeah. Well, you should tell him that.
Well, it took a couple of years. I kept trying to get Mac and Jennifer to move to Las Vegas. So I called Eugene one day and I said, Eugene, I'm trying to get Mac and Jennifer to move to Las Vegas. So if you can use some subliminal thing or, drop some hints, he says, don't worry, I'll take care of it. So he calls up Mac or Jennifer, one of them, and says, oh, I had a dream the other night. And you were in it. And the amazing thing was you had moved to Las Vegas. And you guys were so happy there.
So, yeah.
How true was that dream? Or was that all just a put on to get Mac to come out to Vegas?
No, he didn't. He made up that dream out of whole cloth. That wasn't an actual dream he had.
Yeah, he did that. I asked him to do that, and he just made that up and told them. and then it came true a year or two later. So he was psychic.
I'd like to think that every major life decision Mac made was because of a Eugene Berger dream. Yeah. That's my sincere hope.
I believe that to be the case. Yeah.
You should marry Jennifer.
Well, everybody said that. Max Maven, Eugene Berger, Lance Burton. That's enough.
I have a question from Chris Harper. I'll put it up on the screen. It says, any stories from Mac and Lance Burton at Abbott's get-togethers when they were teens?
Yeah, well, we were in the youth contest in 1977, and Mac King saved my butt because
I regret that to this day, actually.
Yeah, he was on the first morning of the competition.
Yeah, back in the day, it was a powerful event. They had, I don't know, 40 entries or something. They did like 20 one day and then 20 another day.
So yeah, it was 2 or 3 days of competition. It was in the morning, and Mac was on the first morning, and I was on the second morning, or so I thought. And all of a sudden, I get a call at 7 in the morning because I wasn't planning on getting there early, and it was Mac on the phone saying, "Hey, they have you scheduled to go on this morning." And I was like, holy cow. And I jumped out of the bed and jumped in the shower and grabbed my doves and my tuxedo and hurried down there. And I made it in time to be on the contest. And there was a quarter involved in this.
Yeah. I was sitting here trying to think of her. Peg Weichel was her name. And because I didn't have any change. And there was, nobody had, this was 77, no pay, it's a payphone, and I didn't have any money, no coins. And I went out in the audience, and I'm like, "Hey, I need to make a phone call. Does anybody have a quarter?" And this woman, Peg Weichel, and she we remained friends after that. She gave me a quarter. You owe it really to Peg Weichel for coming up with a quarter. And her son Steve was in the contest a couple of years later, I think. Steve Weichel. So yeah, that contest happened. That was a pretty good year for the Abbott's contest. The top 3 finishers were Lance Burton, Jeff Hobson, and Matt King in that order. And so if I hadn't called you, I'd have finished second.
Somebody asked me to ask you about the cabin you stayed at while at Abbott's, which involves socks on a ceiling fan.
It does.
That wasn't me. That was just Matt.
No, Lance wasn't involved in that. That was he was much too famous to have been there at that point.
By the way, you know what was crazy was Eugene Berger saw the exact order of who was going to win in a dream at one point.
Right? Yeah, that's true. Man, who else was on that? I mean, I think Franz Harari was on that contest.
Was he?
Yeah, a guy named Jeff Bibick, who's a magician in Chicago. Steve Ryder, who's also a professional. Al Ullman, Al the Only, was in that contest. Greg Otto was in that contest, doing a manipulation act. But Greg's a stand-up comic now in LA. Who else was on that year?
That was 43 years ago. I don't know how you can remember everyone.
That's amazing. That's one of the amazing things about magic. I'm still friends with all of those guys from when we were 16 or 17 years old. I don't think there's anything like it, really.
Yeah, actually, Chad Long asked for a favor. Speaking of friendship, he's asking for 2 tickets to your Friday self-isolation at 3 p.m.
Yeah, that would put me over 10, so I can't do it.
I love that. That should have been the other one, the other name for this show. I was trying to figure out what I should call it. I thought Who Books That comes a lot, but that puts me over the 10 would also have been perfect as well.
So the sock thing, yeah, Lance wasn't involved in that, but I mean, me and Mike Caveney, Tina Leonard, I want to say Dana Daniels, and there were Patrick Albanese, maybe Joel Hodgson. There were a big group of us from LA who were going to Abbott's, and so we had rented a van at the Chicago airport. And do you know this story, Lance?
I've heard it before, but yeah.
So I rent this van. We're all on different flights because we're all coming from over all different spots, but we're all meeting at Chicago within an hour of each other. I get this van. I pull up to where Chris Hart is I go in to leave the van on the curb, run in to get Chris Hart with his luggage, and they're towing this van away when we come out. It's up on the tow truck, and I'm like, I'll give you $50 right now to just put that down on the ground. That I can't. And so we went and got the van. He had to tow it in with me sitting next to him, and then I had to pay the fine, grab the van, come back and get everybody else. We drive to Abbott's. It's pouring down rain. We watched the show that night. It's Wednesday night show. We're all staying in some big house that none of us have ever stayed in before. And they rent out these houses. So Mike had arranged this house. They draw out these directions. We're riding around. It's pouring down rain. We can't see. It's like 1 a.m. There's one house with a light on, and we're going, and Mike goes up and says, "Hi, I'm one of the magicians. I'm sorry to bother you." He knocks on this door. The woman comes to the door, and I'm one of the magicians, and we're staying in a house near here, but we can't really find this address. Some idiot wrote this, but I can't make heads nor tails. And she said, "Well, I'm that idiot, by the way." So it's the woman who had written the directions. And
it feels like an Abbott's moment because that town is so small. That's the only way that could happen.
Yeah. And so she said, you're a street off. You can see it up there. You know, if you go right and right and right, it's the house right up one street over. So we get there, And we get out, look at the mailbox. Okay, that's the right number. We go inside. There's a big stack of mail, all with the right number, but the place is filthy. It's like they hadn't cleaned it before they rented it to us. I mean, dirty dishes in the sink, a big pile of trash. But there were clean sheets in the laundry basket, and so we're all sitting around. We're like, we do the dishes, take out the trash, we make the beds, and we're all sitting around in the living room. And there's a ceiling fan, and I think in those laundry baskets there were also socks with the sheets. And so we're playing a game where we're just throwing socks up so you can get a sock to stick on the ceiling fan. And a woman comes in the kitchen and goes, "What the hell are y'all doing in my house?" And we're like, "What?" She said, "Ma'am, she said, you're supposed to stay. I know where you're supposed to stay. You're supposed to be in the house next door." So sorry. We'll move right over. And she says, "You're not leaving here until the police come and look over this house." And I said, "Ma'am, all we've done is do your dishes and make your bed and take out your trash. Well, I'm going over this whole house with the police, and you're not stepping foot out of this house until the police come." So she calls the police and gets the poor, there's like one police officer in that town, makes him get out of bed and come over, and he's like rolling his eyes, and she leads us through the thing. And, it's like we said, "Ma'am, the mail was right here with the right." "Yeah, that's because I'm collecting their mail while they're out of town." And so she wouldn't let us leave. And so there's probably.
I pioneered the art of the reverse robbery.
Yeah. Yeah. So she was really pissed. There's no real good ending to that story.
No, it's great. The first time I ever did Abbott's, because they put me in a house with Mark Kalin and Ginger, Jonathan Goodwin, and it was like quite a distance from the house to the high school where you perform. And I was literally just rolling down the street with my suitcase. And that was when Kalin was driving past me. And he said it looked like a bad country music song of just the sad magician rolling down the stone path, kicking up dust. And we have a couple of comments, by the way. This guy, Robert Chiddle, said, "Mr. Burton, can you talk some stories about your friend Jeff McBride?" Which means Jeff McBride has a second Facebook account under the name Robert Chiddle. And we have a howdy from Emily Gillette.
Hey, howdy.
Hey.
How's it going?
Yeah, Jeff McBride. Well, Mac and I have known each other since we were 14 years old. We met at the Louisville Magic Club, and I was a little older when I met Jeff. I think Jeff and I were both probably about 23 when we met, but we had been hearing of each other for years because we were both, as teenage magicians, were in contests, and they'd usually put the picture of the winner of the contest, in the Magic magazine. So anyway, Jeff and I had been hearing of each other for years and years, and then we finally met when it was at the IBM convention in Norfolk, Virginia, and it was.
I was there with my wife. What
you
year?
were?
I might not even been married at that time.
Oh, in Norfolk?
Yeah, Jen was with me.
Well, anyway, I was standing in the lobby. It was in intermission from one of the shows, and I had a Coca-Cola in my hand, and I feel a tap on my shoulder, and I turn around, and there's this guy standing there, and
in a robe.
What?
In a robe?
No, he had on, the kind of Jeff McBride pants, and he says, "Are you Lance Burton?" And I said, "Yes." And he says, "I'm Jeff McBride," and he sticks his hand out to shake it. And I go, and then I turn and I tap another guy on the shoulder, and he turns around, and I said, "Hold this." And I hand him my Coca-Cola, and I turn back to Jeff, and I go, "Hey, come on." And then we hugged, and that was the first time I ever met Jeff, and we've been very good friends ever since.
The first time I ever met Jeff, we did a taping of Masters of Illusion, which features 20 to 30 magicians every season, which is larger than its audience. Roast joke. But they never aired my set. But Jeff, I never met Jeff before, and Jeff was in his costume, and he did a great set. and we get to go to the van to go back to the hotel, and I realized Jeff, that's not just his costume. He's gonna wear that to the hotel and then to dinner, and that is Jeff both on and off the stage. It was remarkable.
Yes, Jeff has a singular fashion experience.
No, I'm jealous, especially in the quarantine. Having a set of robes would be phenomenal.
Right?
Are you guys wearing pants?
And I'm wearing sweatpants.
All right. I actually put on pants for you.
And hey, nice. And Jeff McBride.
Lance knows I never wear pants.
Your Max stands up, and then there's just a blur.
And Jeff McBride, for anybody who doesn't know, Jeff McBride with his Magic and Mystery School on Mondays, they have their mystery school night, and he's during the quarantine for the next few weeks, he's opened up his magic school free of charge to everybody.
That conflicts with Harrison's show on Monday.
Oh, yeah.
They can download this later as a podcast. We're all friendly. But Lance, we definitely got to get you on as a guest on a future episode. Is there any embarrassing story you would like to share about Mac before we let you go?
Max paid me not to tell any embarrassing stories, and I've done the same with him. So anyway, I just I just want to say this: anybody watching this, if you when Vegas gets back to work and the shows are open, you while you have the chance, go see Mac King. If you come to Vegas and you don't see Mac King, you've wasted your trip. And he is in all sincerity, Mac King is the finest magician you will ever see, because he's the finest magician working in the world today. And
if you retire,
you've wasted your life if you don't go see him live.
And that's video. That's on video. You can't take it back.
Wow! Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us as a special surprise guest, Lance.
What do I owe you?
Thank you.
Hey, thanks for showing up.
That was our special surprise.
Oh, very sweet.
We can try to get him back in towards the end if you want as well.
Showering for the first time in a week. Before this, I was thinking, this will be fun, but he and I just did a thing at the Smith Center for the Performing Arts here a few weeks ago, or a few months ago now, I guess, where the two of us were interviewed together. And I'm like, that was really fun. And that'd be kind of a fun thing to do in the future on here. So never mind. We've done it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, no, we'll get him back on, and then we'll surprise him with you. We'll do the reverse.
Yeah.
If only I could video stream the bear, that would be amazing. But let's talk a little bit about, in terms of developing your show. I know there's people who are interested about your process and how do you develop a bit? What does that look like from start to finish? How long does it take to go from an idea to something that you feel proud of in your show?
I mean, I bet we're similar in that some things you go, hey, between the 1 o'clock and the 3 o'clock show, you think of something and it goes in at the 3 o'clock show. And some things you think of, and the props for it sit in the corner, and you look at it and you think about it and you fiddle around, and you don't have any kids, but you make your daughter's friends watch it over and over again in your living room.
And I have a bunch of kids that I'm forced to watch up in my living room. I think I get arrested.
Yeah, right. And so, and then it takes a number of years, and so and then stuff you work on and you work on and you work on, and you never decide that it's good enough to get in front of people. So it varies from trick to trick to trick, but and my show, when Lance and I did shows together at Tombstone Junction, my show opened with the rope trick and closed with a burnt bill routine, and that was in 1977 or something. Whenever that, I can't remember. 79 maybe. I can't remember what year that. No, it had to have been later than that. No, right around there. 79 or 80. when we started there. Anyway, so that's 40 years ago. My shows open with the rope trick, close with a burnt bill trick. 40 years later, my show opens with a rope trick, closes with the burnt bill trick. And it, you know, since I've been at Harrah's, I've added maybe 4 real tricks, you know, like start to finish. I mean, I've tried other things, and there are 2 or 3 other things that just didn't make the cut. But over the years, it's just gotten so interwoven, the show. You know, I mean, there's so many callbacks, and there's so many things that, you know, if I take out this trick, that affects 3 other tricks, and there's so much overlap that it's hard. You know, that's the hardest thing for me, is figuring out what to take out. And so in the last couple of years, I mean, I haven't taken out a trick, but I've added like 3 tricks, but I've just tightened up other tricks, and, you know, which is good for me. You know, tricks that were 8 or 10 minutes are now 4 or 5 minutes, and you lose some laughs and you lose some bits, but you know, you fill them in with other new stuff. And so that's the process for me now, is trying to figure out how to get rid of stuff so I can put stuff in without sacrificing that show. I mean, because it really does have a beginning and a middle and an end, and everything is tied together. And I mean, it doesn't have a real plot, but it does have a real through line, really. You know, you learn more about me as the show goes on too. And so,
and nobody's asking Andrew Lloyd Webber, hey, your Phantom of the Opera is great, and it's been running for 20 years. Do you mind like switching out a musical number and trying something new in the middle?
Yeah, I mean, you know, the producer of the show, Bill Volkner, who I've been, you know, who's the guy who originally sold the show to Harrah's. You know, I was talking about that problem, and he said that same example, except for he used Wicked, which is a better show to me. But anyway,
I also like that his reference was more modern than mine.
So process. I mean, you know, it's thinking of stuff. Like right now, I'm working on 2 different tricks, and I mean, the props are sitting on the other side of this monitor on my desk, and a bunch of books that you know, kind of, I've got little bits or whatever to help me think about it. So this is going to be a good, you know, I think I'm going to be off work. I mean, I don't know, at least another month, and maybe more. And so it's a good time to work on new stuff.
Do you think the Matt King show that comes back after quarantine is markedly different than the one that started before it?
Maybe the first one.
Yeah, I guess there's no way to not be rusty. I'm facing the same thing, where I'm used to going up every night, and all of a sudden I'm going to be in front of an audience with maybe a month or 2 of no live shows.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have anything in the show trick-wise where I think I'm going to, you know, there's a danger of me screwing up the magic trick part. But I mean, the stuff where somebody, you know, the instantaneous, without thinking reactions to stuff that happens, or whatever, or, you know, I think that's not going to be there for a little while. That's what I think I'll lose for a little bit when I come back.
Yeah, somebody asked a good question that leads out right out of that, which is Brett wrote, what is more important for your show, strong magic or strong comedy? Like, when you're developing new stuff, is the focus on this has got to be really good magically, or this has got to be really funny? Does one take priority over the other?
Eventually, no, neither. I mean, but at the beginning, what I'm working on at the beginning is, to me, mostly the process for me is a strong magic trick at the beginning, trying to figure out a really strong magic trick. And then I don't, you know, everything I say on stage, I don't write necessarily. I mean, I make notes and phrases and words or whatever that I want to get to, but a lot of the funny parts are developed in front of people in the show. And like, for instance, I worked on a book test for, I don't know, 6 or 7 weeks, and I could just never figure out how to keep getting laughs through that trick. I mean, it just, that particular thing, I had a really good idea, I thought, but it never got as funny as the rest of the show, even with it, after almost 2 months. And so I just kind of put that aside. And that happens. But the joke part, I mean, eventually I want the strong comedy and the strong magic to be sort of equal. I mean, as strong as possible on both sides of that equation. And I'm sure you've run into this sometimes. I mean, they can work at odds as well. I mean, if you're getting a giant laugh, it's really hard to have them be simultaneous. You have to, sometimes that laugh can take away from the magic, or sometimes the magic can be so incredible that joke, you got to wait a minute, or the joke has to be right before, or it's got to be like some sort of tag on the end afterwards, or whatever. It's really a delicate thing to put those two things together. And
it's like, what is the thing you can't do? You can't sneeze and blink at the same time, or something like, or you have to blink when you sneeze. I feel like it's the same thing with astonishment and laughter. If you try to do it at the same time, your eyes blow out of your head.
Maybe, yeah. It's tricky. So, but in answer to Brett's thing, both are really of equal importance to me eventually.
You got a very good review from the Ohio All-Star Wrestling Team. Says Maxim is definitely the #1 show in Las Vegas.
I know, it's funny.
Families to see.
Bart, hey Bart.
If you're looking to update your website, the Ohio All-Star Wrestling Team is into you.
I swear to you, Bart, that I almost wore my Ohio All-Star Wrestling hoodie to this interview.
Oh, that's awesome. One of my most prized possessions is I managed to get an Abbott's basketball jersey.
Oh, really?
In Magi. They were throwing out the old uniforms, and I was like, I will absolutely take one of those.
You stole it, right, from backstage?
I was gifted it from their closet.
Yeah.
The high school coach said I could take it, so I assumed he had the authority.
Oh, wow. That's a great idea. I would really like to get that souvenir.
They should sell those. They would make a fortune.
Yeah.
There we go. See, we're generating income during the quarantine.
Not for us, but yes.
We get 10% of that. I had a bunch of people have been asking about your worst shows, and a couple people have been hinting at them. Somebody mentioned Rope and Thumb, and somebody mentioned, I think, Japan.
I don't remember really, I mean, I've done a bunch of different things in Japan that, weren't as good as they could be. But
I think the reference was to your flight to Japan.
I don't remember that either.
Potentially missing a flight.
Oh!
This feels like really bad pre-show when you're on the news and you try to pre-show a news reporter and they're asking about the card in their pocket. And you're like, no, don't worry about what I wrote down. Just the thing you're thinking of.
So the Japan flight, that was the first time. I think what they're talking about is the first time I ever got booked on a cruise. I never really wanted to do cruise ships. That wasn't a goal or anything, because at the time, especially, there was only, you did 1 or 2 shows a week. You'd get on a ship for a week and you'd only do 1 or 2 shows, and usually in the same night. And that just wasn't enough shows for me at the time to feel like I was going to get any better. And
I told that to my agent, and he did not like that answer.
Really?
I was like, I don't want to. I was like, I can't do a cruise because I need to get on stage every night. And if I'm stuck on a boat, I can't do it.
Yeah, right. I think,
And next time he asks, I'm just going to yell Corona and then hang up.
Right. Well, so, but I had taken a cruise. This was in 1987 or 8. So, I mean, I was really hurting for money. So I took a cruise, and it was booked by a guy named Ron Wilson, who used to, hang out at the castle, but he was also a cruise agent. and Ron was on cruises all the time, and so he had booked me for this cruise, and I was going to fly to Japan and get on this cruise. And I'm packing in my little apartment in LA, and my wife was at work. I'm packing up my stuff, and I'm going through stuff, and I'm looking at my ticket, and I'm like, I'd never flown overseas at the time, I don't think. And I'm looking, and I'm going, wait a minute, I get there tomorrow. I was supposed to leave 2 hours ago.
Oh God.
And
That's the worst feeling in the world.
unbelievable. I never missed a show in my life. That's and I can't say that anymore. I did miss one in October this past year. Those are the only 2 shows I ever missed in my life. And I mean, it was just the weirdest feeling. I have this vivid memory of just holding this ticket in my hand and running around my apartment, just like not knowing what to do. And just, I mean, literally running in a circle, like, what am I, how do I fix, so I call Ron Wilson, and I said, Ron, it's Mac. I'm sitting at home, and I just noticed that my flight left 2 hours ago. And Ron, you probably didn't ever know him. He's one of the great magic books too of all time. Richard Kaufman put out the Magic of Ron Wilson's great book. Anyway, Ron was this really sweet guy, and his only response was, "Oh dear."
That's super helpful.
Yeah, and
that's like close to the George Takei. Oh my.
Right, exactly. And so I think Ron ended up calling somebody, a Japanese magician who could get on that ship in my stead. But it just, and so it was years and years before I ever did. And my used to be years, I don't know, before our daughter was born, so 22 or 24, 5 years ago. I used to do one ship a year just to take my wife and get to go for a little trip. But that was never, I don't think it was because of that missed flight that I didn't want to do cruises, but maybe that had to do with it. So
I had the opposite problem once. I once got to an airport a day early. Have you ever done that where you realize your day off?
Well, I was doing a couple shows in Munich, Germany. I don't know, a few years ago, and my wife and daughter went with me. We made a little trip out of it. So I did the shows, and then we hung out in Germany for another couple of days, and then we took the train to Austria and hung out in Salzburg just for a little vacation. And so we get ready to come home, and we get to the airport, and I can't find your reservation anywhere. And we're like, well, here it is right here. And that's for tomorrow. So we call back the hotel real quick from the airport and say, hey, have you cleaned our room yet? Can we have that room back for a night? And so we moved back into that same room. So it wasn't terrible. I didn't miss any shows back here. Still a couple days. So
I think that's also a good moment to bring in another question, because we're talking about international performances, and I know your bio has you performing all over the world, all sorts of different countries. Somebody asked specifically about Chad Long said seeing Mac in Havana, Cuba was one of the best performances, winning over an audience I've ever seen. Truly brilliant. Could he comment on what that was like? Could you comment on that and more broadly, because doing comedy in another country, especially if it's not in your language, is insanely difficult. So how do you approach that kind of task?
Thank you, Chad. I don't remember. He said that like it was like I started out terrible, or there was something at the beginning that was terrible, and then somehow I brilliantly made it great by the end. But I don't remember it being bad at all. We had, I mean, that was one of the best trips I've ever been on, and partly because Chad was there. That's just lie. That's a lie.
He can edit that out though. He can edit that part out, and then he has.
All right. So I don't remember what. I mean, thank you, but I don't remember that being. Yeah. That's what just got posted up there from Michael Costa that was one of my favorites too. We did a couple of different shows for kids. One was there was a group of kids that were like having PE out in a square, and they were like dancing, and we started doing tricks for them, and we kind of did a little show. And that was in Havana. But then after that, we went to another smaller town, a few of us, and we let it be known that there was going to be a magic show at the end of the street in front of somebody's garage, and 6 or 8 of us just did, and kids came and sat on the ground, and we did magic. And one guy who spoke Spanish and English translated for us, and so it was just just a delightful thing. And it really, I mean, not to be too corny, but I mean, it really is a great icebreaker. One of the other things, when we went to my wife and I went to the Olympics in Spain in '92, and just for fun, and I carried around in my little fanny pack a deck of cards and a piece of rope, and anytime there was a group.
Well, that's also the most 1992 thing you could do, is have a fanny pack. Period.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And doing magic.
Coming back though.
Say again?
They're coming back.
Yeah. My daughter is 19 and she wears one. So, and she's a little more fashion. She has a little more fashion sense than me, but not really. I mean, she won't watch this, so not much. But I mean, I bet you've done this. My first sort of introduction to doing magic or talking, a talking comedy magic show to people who don't speak English was doing magic for the deaf, doing a show for the deaf. And so there's somebody doing sign language off to the side. And that's really almost exactly the same, because I mean they're speaking a different language than you, and the woman who did that, it was I don't know what he's doing anymore. I haven't seen him or heard anything about him. Do you ever know a comic, Fred Greenlee?
That sounds really familiar.
Yeah, he was a friend of Bill Hicks and a bunch of those Texas guys, and so it was at I want to say at the Laugh Stop in Houston, and they asked us to do a special show for the deaf. And the woman who was doing that, perfect. And the woman who was doing the interpreting, talked to Fred and I pretty extensively beforehand about the way to do this, and when to pause, and how to, because she had done this before with other comics, and that was really helpful when I went to Japan for the first time, and I worked with an interpreter for the first time for Japanese, having done that for the blind, and having this woman's advice on how often to pause, and the interaction with the interpreter and the audience and the person on stage, and how to kind of make all that work together. Her advice was invaluable. And so, I mean, it's the big.
For like Japan, like even though the translator can get the language across, there's still a cultural barrier too, because people laugh at different things in Japan than they might in Las Vegas.
Yeah, I don't.
You find that not to be the case.
Maybe. I mean, when you put on a yellow raincoat and tiptoe around like you're invisible, or if you're pulling a card out of your pants, or I mean, those are pretty, I think, universal. I think you could do those anywhere, that kind of stuff. And so I've been really lucky that I mean, it wasn't initially designed this way, but over the years, I mean, it's turned out to be the case that, 8-year-olds, 80-year-olds, even harder, 18-year-olds,
Yeah.
all over the world, there's something universal about the magic, and the language seems to be okay. I mean, but when you're doing that in a different country where they don't, where English isn't their first language, you do rely, I think, more on having shiny things for them to look at than you do on, wordplay or whatever.
And there's a level of trust too, because you have to trust that the translator is actually saying what you're saying.
Yeah, there's a level of trust, but there's also if you're able to convey, the people who are good at it, I think, convey that they're trying really.
Right.
They're trying to make they're listening to the audience, and I mean, it's the same whether they speak English or French or whatever. It's your sincerity comes through. The fact that you're trying and not a dick.
Yeah. No, for sure. Although when I was in Kazakhstan with the illusionist, and we had a translator, and I did a joke where I mentioned my hotel, and so I said hotel, and I heard Hilton, and I was like, "What? That's very specific." And we found out later that they had been sponsoring. There's some arrangement between the hotel, and so they were looking for a way to insert the brand into somebody's act. So he was actively changing some of my stuff to plug the companies that were sponsoring.
Yeah, the joke's probably the same though, right?
Well, it's funny. We had two translators. We had a translator watching the other translator, and then I had to work with the guy joke by joke and explain to him what made each joke funny, so he knew how to translate it.
Right, and that's another thing too. I mean, having somebody who's familiar with your act. The last time I went to Japan, Shudogawa was on the show, and so I mean, he'd seen my show bunches of times. So having somebody familiar with the show really makes a giant difference too. So.
Yeah, and I also found accelerating into a punchline was because there were some people who would give the translator 2 minutes worth of stuff and then pause and stand there, and then the translator would talk for 2 minutes. And I realized I can give him smaller and smaller amounts as we got towards the big punch, so that it would hit.
I was trying to, when I was telling that story about meeting, getting the advice from the sign interpreter. I was trying to remember some of that specific advice, and that was one of them. But I couldn't remember any specific advice. But that is one of them. Smaller chunks are better usually.
And they have to sign everything, which I have a YouTube video of. I kind of, as long as I usually clear it with them in advance and say, hey, if I do any bits with you, is that okay? Because you want to make sure they're okay with it, and the audience who is relying on them to understand you is okay with it. But even in Kazakhstan, I had a bit where he had to translate, hi, this is the translator speaking, and I really want to give the performer a hug. And he would have to come over and give me a hug during the show. Yeah. I would pay him in shampoo because that was the running gag for that show. But then it turned out that he wasn't actually being paid. And so literally he was saving those shampoos because he was getting paid in my shampoos.
Oh.
It was heartbreaking. I had no idea. I thought he was getting paid like the rest of everybody.
You didn't get paid in shampoo.
No, thank God. But he was nice. He was very nice. He had a son named, he goes, this is my son. I named it after my favorite American performer, Michael Jackson. And I was like, oh no, he doesn't know. Because I guess in Kazakhstan, the news hasn't traveled, but he's named his child. So yeah, there's a Michael running around in Kazakhstan.
Yeah.
But we have a question from Eric. Oh yeah, sorry.
What?
Oh, I cut you off right before.
No, I was just going to say there's probably a little Harrison now too.
Yeah, exactly. The first Jew in Kazakhstan. It's going to be very exciting. This is a question from Eric Mead. Hi, H. Ask Mac about the high school show and the worst introduction ever.
So let's see. So the high school, I think there's a college show. Another market where I put my toe in and pulled my toe out pretty quick. Wasn't the right spot for me. I didn't enjoy those. In the mid '90s, the comedy club, sort of was on the downslope around the country a little bit, and so I started looking around for college work too, and never did really like it. I mean, it was so up and down sometimes. I'm sure have you done some? I'm sure.
Oh yeah. Although colleges in the last 5 years, maybe 7 years, they've gotten like aggressively, it's harder.
Oh really?
You get sent a list of what you can't talk about.
Oh right, yeah, right. Yeah, I understand. Yeah, that's a different deal than what for me. My issue was that sometimes it would be unbelievable. You'd show up and it would be a great theater with 16 students on the crew, and
Right.
the would be everywhere on the campus, and then sometimes you'd show up and the posters would be on the entertainment guy's desk still, and you'd be doing a show in the corner in the lunchroom with no amplification, and and it was never, and there was never any way to know until you got there, really.
I was on a big college tour, and it was lunchroom after lunchroom, like in the afternoon sometimes. Sometimes they didn't even know there was a show, but they'd make you do it anyway. So people are eating, and they're annoyed at you because they're trying to study and you're doing your jokes.
Yeah.
And I finally look at my calendar, and the last show is in the Cabaret. And I'm like, all right, it's been a tough tour, but I'm going to be in the Cabaret. This is a great way to bring this tour home. And the Cabaret is the name of their lunchroom.
Yeah, right. That's the name of it. That's hilarious.
It was called the Cabaret Lunchroom.
Yeah. So so the thing Eric's talking about, I think, is I get a call like a week before the show at a college, and it's the entertainment coordinator who wasn't a student. A lot of those people are students, at least they were. And so this guy calls me and says, "Hey, we just want to let you know that we're still planning on you being here. We didn't know whether you'd heard the news, but we still want you." And this was in Mississippi, I think. And I was living in LA, and I said, "No, I hadn't heard the news, but I'm glad you still want me there. I'm planning on being there." "What was the news?" And he said, "Well, a very popular student was killed on campus 2 days ago." "Oh, that's just awful." He says, "And so his memorial service is scheduled for the same day that you're gonna be here."
Oh no.
And I said, "Well, I'm sure you probably signed a contract that said that if you cancel right now, you still owe money. But I'm also sure that if you call the agent and say, 'Hey, here's the circumstances, can we reschedule?' that they will do so." "Nope, we want you to come. We think it'll be great." So you're going to be in the same room as this memorial service." "Really?" "Yeah, we think it's, and I said, "Look, I don't know that that's a good idea." He says, "Yeah, no, I think as soon as we've finished, we're going to introduce you." And I said, "I don't think that's a good, I think, at least give people 30 or 40 minutes so that they can leave and come back if they choose." "Nope. We want them, we don't want them to have the opportunity to leave. We think this will be great." As a way to bring people back to, out of their sorrow. Well, and at the time I needed the dough. Or I would have said, "I just think this is a bad idea. I'm not going to come." And also, it's not just that you need the dough. I don't know whether you feel this way, but I bet you do, and I'll bet a lot of people watching or listening do. "Well, that's going to be rough, but I'm really good. I can overcome the situation."
Yeah. I think there's a weird sickness. I've been to a lot of shows where everybody's bombing, And every comedian right before they go on goes, I'm the one who's going to break them.
Wait, I'm the one who's going to turn this whole thing around.
Yeah, 5 comics have bombed. You're the one that's going to turn it around.
So, so I get there and I'm like back behind this like plywood but wall, but it doesn't go up to the ceiling. And I'm putting all this little, all these little things in my coat and getting ready while they're out there having this memorial service. And they're talking about their poor dead friend, and their people are standing up in the audience, telling their memories, and they even address. And I find out while I'm standing back there, putting a rock in my pocket and loading up crap, Fig Newtons, and getting ready to go out there, that the boy's mom and dad, this poor, are sitting in the front.
Oh, Jesus.
Somebody addresses them or talks to them, or they say something. I don't remember exactly how I know this, but now I know that sitting right in the front. And so I'm like, oh my, this is just heart-wrenching. I mean, it's just the most, it's just the most surreal thing that I've ever been a part of. I mean, I'm back there. I'm supposed to go out and do, rope trick. And howdy. And this poor, the parents they've lost their child who's, probably 18, 19 years old. And they're right there. And it's like I'm mocking them almost. And I should have just said, no, I'm not going out there. That's one of my regrets in my life, that I didn't just refuse to go out and do that. But I go out and just like, howdy, I'm Matt King. And I do the rope trick and I throw the rope to a woman in the audience. And I say, you're going to have to come up on stage. And she says, no, I'm not. Okay, well, yeah, you don't have to come on stage. Just I'll come to you and you pick a card. I'm not picking a damn card. Yeah, well, okay, yeah, you don't have to pick a card. Would you pick? I'm not picking it. And I don't remember what I remember after that is, I was supposed to do an hour. Number one.
Jason England just wrote in, hey lady, you enjoying the show? Tell your face.
So I remember now I just start doing the tricks without any, because almost every trick in the show is audience participation. I'm supposed to do an hour. And so I just start narrating my show. I say at this point, I would borrow $1 from someone and they would sign their name on it. And I would put it in one of these, and I'm doing these things but there's no audience participation and there's no laughs and no applause. There's just me talking and maybe some people in the back got up, but everybody else just sat there. They didn't even just get, it's like I've done terrible shows where people get up and leave. But I've never done this terrible of a show where people just sat there and didn't leave. And, and most aren't even looking at me. They just, they feel bad for themselves. They feel terrible for me, I think, and so, and then at the end, I say, and I would burn it and you would tear it open and inside would be the card you picked earlier instead of the money. And the money we would think the money is gone, but it wasn't, because now look, I'm taking off my shoe and inside the shoe is the worm that disappeared earlier. And then there's a rock in my shoe. And then you would wave the wand over the shoe and there'd be a telephone. And then I would say, it's for you. And you would unscrew the earpiece and inside would be your money with your signature on it. And then we would all chant, Matt King, Matt King. And I would go off stage and I'd come back and do one more trick for my encore. And I said, thank you. And I'm sorry at the end. And I walked off. And luckily, This wasn't like a 7 o'clock in the evening show. This was like 2 or 3 in the afternoon, and my flight was like at 7 or 8 that night coming back. It was a later in the evening flight, or early evening, I guess. And so luckily, I got in a car and drove to the airport, and didn't have to sit in that town in my hotel room. I could get home and cry with my wife about how terrible this experience was that night. I didn't have to be alone. And so, I mean, and then like a week later, or 2 weeks later, I got a
By the way,
note.
Chris Warren had a similar thought to mine, which was, he said, "Oh no, not the burnt bill routine." So did you do a trick with ashes at a? Cremated.
So I've almost only ever told this story. I've told it on Penn's podcast a couple of times, and I've told it in person once with Penn sitting in the front row, heckling me as I am cackling with laughter through the whole time. This was one of the only times I've ever told the story without Penn heckling me as I tell it. That's pretty good. Yes, I'm glad to see that. And I got a note like 2 weeks later from the entertainment director saying, "Thank you for the show, and it really made a difference." And I got a specific, the note said, "I got a specific thank you from the boys' parents about how much you going on and performing meant to them," which I know to be a lie. I mean, there's just no chance.
Right. Thanks for headlining my son's funeral.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So thank you. I hadn't thought about that in probably a year. That was Eric Mead. Yeah, thank you, Eric.
I did a college once where
actually Eric was the highlight of Cuba.
Yeah, there you go. Now he had cheddar in a blood feud.
Right.
I did a college where the lady said, "We need you to be appropriate. You have to be appropriate. If I find you doing anything that is inappropriate," because the school is called the Assumption College, which is a great name for a religious school, because it's like, is Jesus real? I assume. So they were Assumption College. And anytime something was inappropriate, she would walk towards the stage one step. And she said if she made it to the stage, she would pull my mic and the show was over. And so we played a version of Red Light, Green Light with censorship.
Yeah. Did she
and
ever take
fine. She didn't take any steps forward. And then I looked at my watch. I knew I had 5 minutes left. And I'm like, let's see how close I can get her without her pulling the cord. So I got her closer and closer and closer. And then right before she could pull it, I was like, "Good night," because I know I hit my time. And I get back to the hotel, and I felt the same way. Yours probably felt way worse. But I get to the hotel bar, and I just kind of sigh. And I go, "Can I have a drink?" It's a tough night. And he goes, "Oh, are you a comedian?" And I go, how do you know that?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, every college comedian stays at this hotel, and they all come in the exact same way." Eric Mead said John Archer was the highlight of Cuba. Will confirm another Harrison story.
Yeah, that's one of the most amazing. I don't think it's as bad as the opening, or being open for by a funeral, but it was pretty funereal. At John Archer show. Yeah, it was. That's the worst I've ever felt for a friend watching them perform.
Have you ever done a charity show where you weren't allowed to talk about the charity?
Is that something somebody asked?
Oh, I did a suicide benefit. It was a bet not to increase the number of suicides. But they said, "Please don't make any jokes or references to suicide." But then they buried me they had all these people talk about how they lost people to suicide. And now you're a comedian.
Oh, right. Yeah. No, I thought you were that was some prompting from somebody else who said, "Hey, have Mike tell the thing about the charity." No, I've never had that happen where I couldn't talk about the charity. No.
Reddy Rich, the director of Penn Sunday School, said, "If it makes you feel better, I was here cackling."
Oh, good.
Let me ask you a few more questions, and then we'll absolutely let you go. But everybody has been chatting. I don't know if you see the whole list, but tons of people have written in to say that this has been a fantastic distraction during quarantine, and thank you sincerely. So on behalf of all of them, thank you so much for entertaining everybody during this very weird time. One of the questions I had was, if you could change anything about magic, one thing about magic to make it better, what would you change?
Oh man. I'm not much in the for criticizing people really. One of my favorite things that Eugene Berger ever said was, there are many rooms in the house of magic. I think that's a
And I finished that quote. So why are so many of those magicians in the closets?
Right. That's right. but I mean, I think that's a true statement. I mean, people, I've seen lecturers or you read in books or you hear people say that, you say you're interested in magic, but you don't perform, or you say you're interested in magic, but you don't care about making your show better, or you don't care about, practicing, or you don't care. Who gives a shit what I mean, if you're a hobbyist and you're doing it for yourself, what difference does it make what you do? I mean, people say, well, that ruins it for other people. And, I mean, I think there is some element of that. I mean, I do feel like, that when I started doing comedy clubs, that, those comics' initial reaction to me was negative because of their past experiences with other comedy, quote unquote comedy magicians, people that they had seen or worked with or seen on an open mic night or whatever. And so, I mean, but I mean, eventually it was okay. And I think, I mean, I don't know. I'm a big proponent of just worrying about yourself, really.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I guess a couple more. One was, do you tell strangers you're a magician? And you meet, if you're in an Uber and they ask you what you do you say magician, or do you have a fake career that you tell them?
No, yeah. No, I don't. I'm not ashamed of it.
Yeah. I always get nervous if I tell them that they expect a trick and they expect all. So sometimes I just tell them I'm an accountant.
Really? Do you do that? Really?
Well, you know what? Magician is fine because I think people like magicians, and if it's an Uber drive, they don't expect me to do a trick for them while they're driving. But comedian, they always request you. They want you to start doing jokes.
Right. Yeah. So that's right. And then if you say magician, it's like, oh, what is that? They don't really, they think something. Everybody has their own preconception of what that is too. When you say you're a magician, if you tell that you're an Uber driver, that what kind of they don't know even enough to say what kind of magic do you do.
Right, that's fair. We had a great question from Justin Connors, who said, if you weren't in Vegas, what place would your show be if you had a choice to pick anywhere else in the world?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I've always wanted to do, I don't know whether regret is the right word. I don't really feel much in the way of regret, but I've kind of always wanted to have like a small theater in New York, with a one-man show, I mean, I don't think forever, but I mean, as a short little run, I think that'd be really fun. I'd like to do that. Same in LA, Chicago. But yeah, I mean, wherever I have friends really is the big deal for me. And most of my friends are here or in LA, really. And so I wouldn't mind living in either of those places doing magic shows. But I'm just really lucky that I've, found this place where I can sit down and do that show for 20 years. When I initially started working at Harris, I mean, it was a 1-year contract, and and like 3 months into that, I mean, the big cheese came and said, "Hey, are you interested in re-upping for more?" And so we added 5 years, right? 3 months into that 1-year deal. But I mean, when I first started doing it, I thought, if I can get 2 years out of this, that'll be the most amazing thing ever. So But it turns out, man, shoot, I really love being here and doing shows in the theater. You know, it's so great to just walk in and know where everything is and what's going
Yeah. And what excites you? Like when you walk into the theater now, does what excite you about doing the show differ from what excited you about doing the show in the first year?
I mean, the first year, it's no longer there, but what the Menopause the musical took. There's a smaller showroom at Harrah's, and the first year that was the Improv. So at night during the nighttime there was two comedy shows in that room. So I started working initially in that room when I first started at Harrah's, and there was it sat about 320 maybe but there was a curtain that went across about halfway, and so if you put 100 people in there, it looked pretty full. And my initial goal was to hey, I want to eventually have to open that curtain.
Yeah.
And then, but before the first year was over, we were bringing extra seats in. We got in trouble with the fire marshal for putting 400 people in there. And so they eventually moved me up to the bigger room. And that's, now it's like, so that was my first exciting thing. The first day we opened that curtain, I was like, yeah, this is the greatest. And now what excites me, I don't know. Sometimes, I mean, I'm just so thankful that it exists, that I'm there. My wife and I, sometimes, not lately because of all the shit storm that's going on, but we'd find ourselves going somewhere at night and having to go near the strip or on the strip and just looking at each other's in wonder going, we live in Las Vegas. Such an odd thing. I mean, something that we never thought would happen. And we wouldn't have our daughter if it wasn't for the show at Harrah's. I mean, just unbelievable how it all has worked for me.
Oh, that's awesome. Somebody asked, if you're not funny, can I be a comedy magician?
Oh, if I'm not funny, can I be a comedy magician? Well, I mean, what? I mean,
you can answer that with a question, which is why.
Well, I mean, why would you want to do that if you're not funny? That's the big question, right? And I think, it's like, I don't know how you feel about this, but for me, you can get better at it, I think, if you're not funny, but you're not going to get great at it. I mean, you can be a comedy magician if you're a decent actor. You can learn somebody else's lines and somebody else's tricks and put together a show. A lot of people have, but I don't know what you're getting out of that. And it seems like if you're not funny, maybe there's a different avenue. You can.
Yeah. You don't have to be funny to be a magician. You can be. Yeah. There are other rooms in the house.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Although the comedy room is very fun. I don't think it's a room as much as it's potentially. What room of the house are the comedy magicians in? Is it a bathroom, or is it just like the bachelor pad garage?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know where we're all hanging, but I mean, there's. It's a big room, and I mean, most of my friends are in that room, and I'm happy to be in there with them.
And one more question. Oh, by the way, Jason complimented your Wolverine chin beard. He said it's coming along nicely. This is the longest I've ever not shaved, I believe. I think every magician is slowly going to turn into a wizard.
Right? Yeah, but I mean, I don't know whether it's going to get any longer. I feel like I don't have enough testosterone.
We'll find out. That'll be fun. We could do a weekly Matt King beard update.
I'm not a very hairy person.
I just have a bat. I literally, my chest hair is just a bat signal. For some reason, it's just like I don't know why, but it's just the bat.
Oh, I just assumed you waxed.
Oh no, I got a little.
Okay, all right.
The final question is from Dylan Weiss, who said, "Hey Mac, you're amazing. If you could give your 20-year-old self advice on how to get where you are today, what would it be?"
I mean, our good buddy, Mr. Lance Burton, wrote a little booklet called Advice, and I think that's kind of the premise but I've been really lucky. I wouldn't change much about what I've done. I'm not very ambitious, actually, or maybe I'd be more successful.
I think you're doing pretty well.
But yeah, but again, I feel like in many ways I kind of have taken the easiest route all my life, and been really lucky. Yeah, I've talked to Penn about that a little bit. He said that he got to be later in her life. He got to be pretty good buddies with Phyllis Diller, and and she said, I don't do anything unless it's easy. And I don't think that that's terrible advice, really. If you think it's hard, I went through, years of where I would do a show, get in the car, drive overnight, stay in a shitty hotel, get up and do a show on a piece of plywood that was held up with concrete blocks with a light that was in a coffee can, a light bulb in a coffee can shining toward the thing with a mic on a wobbly stand. And I did years of that. And, and people go, how could you do that? And it's like, that wasn't work at all for me.
Yeah.
That was so fun. So if it's that, so that's what I think what Phyllis Diller was saying, if you're not having fun doing it, do something else. Because the stuff that should be, if the stuff that other people might think is hard for you too, you think of it as work, then, maybe find a different work.
Yeah. I had a psych professor who said when he was picking a major, he's like, if you find, he was like, in my college, a lot of people try to go for the hardest thing. We're like, people want challenge, but he's like, maybe it's easy. It doesn't feel like a challenge because you're good at it. He's like, if you find psych easy, it might not be because psych is easy. It might be because you're good at psych. And I feel like same thing with magic.
Yeah, and I think you can go back to that question earlier about, if I'm not funny, can I still be a comedy magician? I think the people that are really successful, first of all, the big thing is, the people who are most successful are the people who've done the most shows. That's really the only real big advice that you would give somebody like the 20-year-old me. But I lucked into that knowledge or, that theory when I was a kid. But it's really true. David Copperfield's done the most shows of anybody alive, most magic shows. And he's the most successful magician alive. After that is probably Lance Burton or Penn and Teller. Also the most successful.
Is the rumor true that David Copperfield died and that there is a robot David Copperfield currently performing in his place?
I can neither confirm nor deny that.
Because if anybody could achieve that, if there was a Westworld robot version of himself performing, it would be David Copperfield.
Yeah, that's probably, he has the money to do that, I think.
And the alien is just a cover. You see that animatronic and don't realize that it's two animatronics.
Right. Yeah. Oh, that's right. Yeah. He's holding the tiny, it's like the ventriloquist dummy who has a ventriloquist.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of somebody who knew you when you were 20, as we wrap up, got to bring Lance back. Hello, Lance.
Hey, so I've been enjoying watching the interview, and Mac, I'm enjoying watching you talk. And there's a lot of friends here. I'm so excited to see that people have showed up. And I just wanted to say that our friend Laura Fisher is watching, and it's her birthday.
Oh my God! Happy birthday!
Hi, Laura Fisher.
Yeah, and her mom's watching also, Sue, and Roger Lovins, who we first met back at Tombstone Junction, was watching a little earlier, and
he had something more important to do.
Yeah, I don't know if he's still here watching or not, but
people's schedules are pretty tight right now.
and I think you're selling yourself a little short when you're saying that you weren't ambitious or you didn't work hard, because, first of all, about the whole comedy magic thing, I met Mac when he was 14, and that's how we became friends. He made me laugh. And I've been laughing at him now for all these years. So first of all, Mac was always naturally funny. Second of all, what's that?
Jasper?
Yeah, there's Jasper. You want to say hi. And second of all, I remember the first time Mac started doing that rope trick. I was there at the lecture when the guy showed it. George Sands came and lectured for the Louisville Magic Club, and Mac bought that trick. And then when we were in Tombstone, he put together his first ending to the trick. He wanted to have something, original for the ending. So he came up. We were working together actually on it to make all the pieces, cut it into little bitty pieces and make them all come back. But over the years, anyway, the point is, over the years, Mac has changed the method 4 or 5 times over the years for that restoring the rope. So he never stopped working on the routine. Is what Johnny Thompson, that was one of his big pieces of advice. He would always say, the main problem is most magicians stop working on their tricks too soon. And Mac never did. He's always honing it and trying out new things on the same tricks and it takes years and years to make it, what you see when you go see his show now.
Well, I mean, yeah. And I think, if you think back about vaudeville and those guys, they all did the same 15-minute act their whole lives. And it just got to be an amazingly polished thing. And so, I mean, I don't want to sound, I want to try to say this without sounding too egotistical, but I mean, that's kind of what I've been trying to do with an hour and 20 minutes is, I've been doing those tricks so long, but I keep, I still find little things with the rope trick, little thing throughout all those tricks in the show as a whole. I still find little things on tricks that I've been doing since I was 15 or 16, 17 years old. There's still little things to change and make it better. And that's what, that's really exciting for me. And so I've been trying to, put together an, 75 minute show that's as polished as those 50, it's a lifetime thing, that show. It's not just a collection of tricks. It's that show is the thing for me. It's not just a bunch of tricks put together.
Well, good work. Keep it up, and you're almost there. You're just
close.
Almost there, my friend.
All right.
And do you guys think, because you guys have been friends for so long, but your styles are very opposite, do you think that helps when helping each other?
Oh my God, it was invaluable. I think when we were at this place, Tombstone Junction, the shows were all the shows were during the day, but we lived walking distance from the little stage where we did the shows, and so at night we could go in there, but also we were sharing like a trailer, like a house trailer, and we every night we could talk about our acts, and and because they were so different, our personas were so different, it made it really easy for me to talk about him and give him advice, and for him to give me advice. I always said that he was way more successful than me because my advice was way better than his advice.
Mac was a much better coach.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I think, and I think that's one of the ththings that made it, for those 3 summers that we did the shows together, it wasn't just 2 guys who were similar. It was really, uh, 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 two different personas on stage, and that made the show a little better than just two people who were similar. And also, I think, I mean, I don't want to put words in Lance's mouth, but I think over the years, I mean, he was a big influence on me in how I thought about methods. I mean, I don't know really any comedy magicians who have, 20 to 23 different body loads, in their coats and their pockets and whatever. And it's just a different way of looking at magic. I mean, it's just not a typical way for a comedy magician to put together an act, And so because of working with Lance, I mean, the way he covered steals and stuff with natural actions was a big influence on the way I tried to do the same thing. And I like to think that when we first started working together, he was, his way of relating to the audience was way different than mine. But I think over the course of our careers, they've become similar. He's taken on that sort of more friendly, injected humor into the show more than initially when you first started doing it. I mean, it was really, your persona was really serious, and it was kind of sex driven, and
it was more of a character. It was more it was a dramatic.
Yeah. I mean, it was, it was, Frank Langella or whatever influence, the Dracula kind of look and the hair
and also Mac knew a lot more close-up magic than I did. So I learned a lot of close-up magic from hanging out with Mac. And so I think we influenced each other. But Mac has always been, had this gift to walk out on stage and people just love him. In fact, I remember back when we were at Tombstone Junction, I had a girlfriend and I was asking her about something I was doing in my act. What do you think about this? What do you think about this when I'm doing this? And one day she said to me, there should be more magicians like Mac King.
I don't think there's a better review than that.
Very nice.
Other than best bargain price show in Las Vegas, according to the Las Vegas Review Journal.
Yeah. So anyway, Mac, a great job today. Thank you for doing this. Harrison, thank you for doing this.
I know you're very busy, and look, I just out of curiosity, I haven't seen you in I don't know, since I don't think I've seen you since we were in Blackpool a month ago. More, but you're alone in your house up on a hill. You got your beard. Can you just show me real quick that your fingernails aren't this long and you're not wearing shoebox or tissue boxes for shoes? Okay, all right, good. I'm afraid you're going to turn into Howard Hughes. All right.
Although people have been complimenting his beard. He said that Lance has definitely shown both of us up in the beard game.
Well, he's had his beard though for how long? Since you retired, right?
Yeah, I've had it for since I finished the movie. And so, yeah, I've had it like 5 years.
Yeah. So
that's a lot of work in that.
We were talking about it, that you're the only guy in America, Lance, who's going to have whose haircut, who's not going to be in desperate need of a haircut.
I
have
At the end of this, I'm going to end up looking like Jesus. I'm going to turn into the other famous Jewish magician.
I'm like, okay, it's getting there.
I've been preparing all my life.
What you say?
I said I've been preparing for this all my life.
Yeah. Do you know what he's even talking about with his haircut, Harrison?
No, I haven't seen what's under that hat.
Secret? Is that a secret, Lance? I don't want to out you in front of these people.
No, it's okay. I think I've mentioned it before. I have a Flowbee.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That is?
Yeah.
That's like a self hair cutter?
Yeah. That hooks to a vacuum cleaner.
Yeah. Hooks to a shop vac.
That's incredible.
Yeah. All those pictures that you've seen of me with the headshots and stuff. The haircut was all done with a flow beam.
Wow, that's the real work, by the way. Some people are asking for the real insight, but I think that's the key there, is get a flow beam.
Yeah. So anyway, this is fun and this is great. I'm glad the IBM is doing this and sponsoring these. And so anyway, good job, guys.
Thank you so much, Lance. We appreciate it.
All right.
And thank you, Mac. Do you have any last words for the audience that's been tuning in?
Oh, thank you so much. I mean, I've been trying to look at these comments, but I haven't done a good job of keeping up. But it's did I just see that John Archer was actually on here?
Yeah, he was.
Hi, John.
Yeah, John Archer said, I never knew Mac lived so close to a sauna. I think that's based on the windows that are behind you.
Oh, okay. Is that are those sauna windows? Those just windows in my office.
Yeah.
I don't know. All right.
But Mac, thank you so much. Honestly, if my 12-year-old self knew that I'd be doing this live stream with Mac, and he'd be over the moon. So thank you so much for everything you do. Thank you so much for participating in this, and hopefully you'll be everybody soon.
My 90-year-old, or my 90-year-old self knew I was doing this.
I'm gonna plug your social at Mac King Show. If you want to follow you on Twitter, Instagram, and they'll find out the moment your show is back up and running at Harris Casino, where he's there every Tuesday through Saturday, 1 and 3 p.m., 10 shows a week. Hopefully soon.
Although, I mean, when this was 2 weeks, an estimated 2 weeks off, I'm like, that's going to be fantastic.
Right.
A month, and I'm like, a month will be good. But I don't know. After a month, when we go on vacation, my, after like 4 or 5 days, my wife will go, I know what's wrong with you. No after applauded for you in 4 whole days.
Exactly.
It is
I
like
think it's very good for comedy magicians performing for cats and dogs.
Right? Yeah. I expect at some point I will go into withdrawal.
Yeah. I'm already feeling it.
Yeah.
But thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it.
Thanks for thanking me, Harrison, and thank you guys for watching. And I just saw something that Jason England wrote.
Yeah.
All right, boys. I'll talk to all of you all soon, I hope.
Thanks so much. And that was Mac King, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for commenting, sending all of your questions, all of your funny responses. A huge thanks to special guest Lance Burton, who also joined us from Kentucky. And of course, a special thank you to Mac King for being our first guest on this. Big thanks to Alexander for helping put this together. Ryan out in Toronto, who's been our producer behind the scenes, making sure this looks pretty. Also, Benjamin Budzak, who designed the animation that we'll cue at the end of this, but you also saw it at the beginning. He has a couple of magic products like Thoughtcast that are out, so check those out. My name is Harrison Greenbaum. You can catch me on the interwebs as well. You can catch me, let's see if I can put that up, at Harrison Comedy on Twitter and on Instagram. I also have a live streaming show called Scam Online, which is tomorrow. That's Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's a live streaming magic show where magicians from all around the world will be performing. Our next episode is Monday, same time, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Who books that? With Mark Kalin and Ginger Lee. Kalin and Ginger, I am so excited to be interviewing them. And then Wednesday, our guest is Shin Lim, which also going to be unbelievable. So make sure you don't miss Monday and Wednesday when we interview Kalin Ginger on Monday and Shin Lim on Wednesday. My name is Harrison Greenbaum. You've been watching Who Books That with Harrison Greenbaum, presented by the International Brotherhood of Magicians. Thank you so much. Please stay in touch, and we'll see you soon.